I am back. I am back with episode 6 of, check out the signage, This Mumma Runs podcast. I am recording tonight with Dr Juliet McGrattan, and we are going to talk about female training performance during your menstrual cycle. But before we get on with it, I need to give a massive shout out to Victoria Prince. They are victoria.prince over on Instagram. So if you're looking for a nifty little signage, this is not an ad, by the way, but if you are looking for a nifty little piece of signage, I would suggest you go over and follow them, give them a like, and yeah, how fun, how cool. Anyway, I'm recording tonight with Dr. Juliet McGrattan. We're going to talk about all things female training, your performance during your menstrual cycle. This is something that affects me and it knocks me on my arse at certain points of the month. So Juliet, I am so looking forward to hearing what she has to say and explaining things, and hopefully there'll be a lot to take away. So ladies, this one's for you, and it's also for the male coaches that train female finely honed athletes, because that is, let's face it, that's what we all are, finely honed athletes. So hopefully there'll be loads to take away from tonight, and I am going to absorb all the knowledge that I can in regards to it. So without further ado, episode 6 of This Mumma Runs podcast. Let's go. Juliet, thank you for coming on the This Mumma Runs podcast to talk to me about female performance during your menstrual cycle, in regards to training and racing and things like that. Because I know you're a racer yourself. You like to do a lot of running and fitness and things like that.
I do, yeah. I don't race that often. Well, yeah, got 2 or 3 kind of big events a year, but I do run lots of times, yeah. In the week to keep me
Amazing.
going.
I mean, and you are a doctor. Are you a GP or?
I used to be a GP. Yeah, I was a
Okay.
GP for about 16 years and I stopped. I think it's about 6 or 7 years ago now when I add it up, just to pursue medicine in a different way. So I no longer sort of see and treat patients, but I use all my medical knowledge to try and help people get healthy and stay healthy and not need the doctor in the first place.
First place, exactly. So how did you because we're going to talk tonight about ladies and their performance during their training and during their menstrual cycle. So how did you get into that kind of aspect of it?
Yeah, I think generally as a female GP, you just see a lot of menstruating women because there are a lot of them about, and so you kind of, even if it's not your sort of special area, you kind of get forced into having to do quite a lot of learning around that topic. And I don't think I really, before I was a runner, because I didn't become a runner until I had 3 children,
Yeah.
and I've been a GP for a lot of years, and I didn't really appreciate the impact of the menstrual cycle, periods, menopause, etc., on women in terms of exercise until I experienced it myself.
Yeah.
So I think once I started to realize what the barriers were myself, then that opened up lots of different viewpoints and conversations and interest with other women generally. So I think it sort of, yeah, came from personal experience and a desire to want to improve and manage my own running, which then led me into writing for running magazines, etc., and developing this other new career, which is generally about all women and all exercise rather than specifically the menstrual cycle. But obviously, it has a massive role to play.
It has a massive role because it is, and it's like yourself, it's only since I've started exercising and training hard and really listening to my body that I have realized just how much of an impact it actually has. Because I suppose as a younger woman, we don't really listen to our bodies much. And if you're not exercising, you don't realize the impact that it does have. And for me, it is something that impacts me greatly. So I will have certain points of the month, and it'll be the same for every woman, I work in dentistry, so we have an oral B rep that comes in, and we got talking about this subject a couple of weeks ago, and I actually said that I was talking to you tonight, so hopefully she'll listen in on it. And she was like, I just feel so tired, and I was like, well, there's a reason for that. And it's until, like I say, you start listening to your body whilst you're training, you don't actually realize the impact that it does have on you. So yeah, it's crazy. That's women for you. Lucky us. But I mean,
Lucky
as
us.
well, at a certain age, I mean, I'm 41, so I'm probably oh God, I'm probably hitting the early onset of perimenopause, and that's going to impact as well. But God,
Yeah, and I think you make some really important points there. I think often certainly in my younger days, I just carried on regardless, and I never really took the time to notice. I wasn't a runner then, but I was still, doing the odd bit of exercise. I tried to run, thought it was awful. But I wasn't really self-aware, and I wasn't really paying attention. I knew I'd get a bit moody and my breast would get a bit sore when I was perimenopause, when I was premenstrual, but I didn't really think very much more about it than that. But I think once you become a runner, you do generally just become more aware of your own body and what feels good and what doesn't feel good, and you've got kind of a marker because you know how a run feels. You can compare it day to day, week to week, and you know that it was awful today, or one day it felt particularly good, and you notice which muscles are working. And so I think you just become generally more sort of self-aware over time.
definitely. I know, like during that month, during that cycle, I will have probably a, a week's window where my training
Mhm.
will be on point, and I feel like I am on top of the world with my training. I'm like, yes. But
Mm.
then at other points, I'm just like, no way. And then God bless my poor coach, because because he's a man. So I have to like tell him the times that I'm feeling tired and
Mhm.
talk to him about things like that. And for women as well, unless you're confident in yourself to talk about things like that, it can be quite an embarrassing issue. Absolutely, especially if you're talking to a male coach who may not necessarily have a massive understanding on it. But yeah, there is definitely plays a part in that monthly training cycle, because I
Yeah.
at times as well, like you say, where my legs just do not want to work. They are so heavy. They're like legs, and I'm dragging them after me. But why? Why is that? Is it hormones? Is it? It's just what, a chemical imbalance?
Sure. Is there a pattern to it? Can you predict during the month when you're going to feel those things?
Yeah, I can,
Yeah.
because I listen to my body, and I
Mhm.
know, like I know this week I'm not. So I am probably now, let's see, coming up to 2 weeks after my period.
Mhm.
So I'm hitting that tiredness stage for me
Mhm.
personally. Whereas I know once I come out of this over the next couple of days, I'm going to be on form. I will
Mhm.
be hitting my training the way I want to hit it.
Yeah.
Um, and then it'll start to slump off for me again. But
Yeah.
that's me. And I mean, and not everybody's going to be the same.
And that is the really crucial thing here, because everybody is different. And, there's, I think it's important to know there's a bit of a lack of research in this,
Yeah,
um, because women are generally understudied compared to men. Thankfully, in more recent times, there are many more research studies and things happening now to address these kind of issues particularly. And also a lot of the studies that have been done on it were done on elite athletes, which don't necessarily fit with kind of recreational runners.
yeah.
Lots of the studies are on elite athletes, which don't necessarily sort of translate to
Mhm.
recreational runners. And what they've tried to measure in the past is very performance orientated statistics. So
Mm.
what's happening to the oxygen consumption and uptake in your body over the menstrual cycle? What's happening to your lactic acid buildup? What's happening to your heart rate? Really kind of really hard performance statistics.
Yeah.
And actually they've shown that there's not very much difference over the menstrual cycle. So really in terms of performance, it shouldn't really matter where you are in your cycle. You can still pull out a really good performance.
Yeah.
But if you talk to any menstruating woman, they will say, well, okay, but performance is much more than just those statistics.
Yeah.
It's your energy levels, it's what you were saying, how you feel, how tired you feel. And there was a study in 2015 where they spoke to 1,000 women after the London Marathon,
Okay.
and about a third of them said that their menstrual cycle had affected their training for the marathon and their performance. So, I mean, that's a lot of women. On the other side of it, that's about 2/3 who said they didn't think it had particularly. So, it's easy to paint a very dismal picture about this. Some women don't really notice that much difference. Other women really, really find it very difficult. And as you said, this is me, this is my personal experience, and
Yeah.
that's so true. That's it. Really is a very, very individual thing, and your good times of the month might be different to another person's good times of the month as well. So it's very, very hard to generalize, which means it's not really helpful to try to find this is what you should do at this time of the cycle and this at this time of the cycle that would fit every woman,
Yeah.
because that's just not going to happen.
It's not
It's
one size
much
fits
more of a
all.
personal thing. Yeah, totally,
Definitely.
totally.
Definitely. I mean, God, I am so lucky because my coach he will work my training plan. I mean, I was talking to him last night, and he was like, because I am now starting my training because I'm doing arc of attrition in January. So bless him, he's trying to work in my training plan around me because he knows just how tired I can get. But why is how could I word it? Like tiredness, it hits me like a block. Like it knocks me on my arse, Juliet. It's horrendous. Why is that? Why do we get so tired from it? Is it
Yeah, so I mean, I think if you think about the menstrual cycle and you think about what's happening, it's controlled by hormones.
yeah.
Um, and those hormone levels change quite a lot over the menstrual cycle. So day one or day one is the first day that you start your period and you start
Mhm.
bleeding. The average cycle length is about 28 days, but you can
Mhm.
still be normal between 25 to 35. And in the very first part of the cycle, the first half, it's called the follicular phase. And this is when the follicles are developing inside the ovaries. And in that phase, estrogen rises quite high. Estrogen is the dominant hormone in that first phase.
Mhm.
Then you reach day 14, around the middle, which
Yeah.
is around when ovulation happens. So an egg is released from the follicle. And then in the second half, it's called the luteal phase. The body's kind of preparing for pregnancy.
Yeah.
But when that doesn't happen, then hormone levels change again. But in that second phase, the main one, which is high, is progesterone. And that's the body sort of preparing for pregnancy. When fertilization of the egg doesn't happen and you're not pregnant, then both progesterone and estrogen fall. And in that premenstrual phase, those hormone levels are all kind of coming quite sharply down to normal again, or to low. So
Yeah.
you've got estrogen mainly in the first half, progesterone mainly in the second half. And women are affected differently by their hormones.
Yeah.
And there's a list of symptoms that you can attribute to sort of each of estrogen and progesterone.
Mhm.
And but to say it is a very sort of individual thing. Some women will find they get a lot of breast tenderness. Some women will never experience that. Some women will get a lot of fatigue. Other women won't. So it's
Yeah.
very much a case of how those hormones make you feel personally.
Yeah.
Progesterone can be known as a kind of a calming, more sleepy hormone. So sometimes that can be something that you might feel if your progesterone levels are higher. So it really, there's a lot of sort of variation between women, and often it's not always the absolute hormone level. It's sometimes the change in a level that
Yeah,
can induce the symptoms, if you get what I mean.
absolutely. Oh, the joys of being a woman.
Ah.
Be lucky.
Yeah, 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 definitely. But I
Oh,
think you're right. I think you do find that there are different times of the cycle where you feel better doing different activities. Some
oh,
women find in the follicular phase, in that first half of the cycle, they feel more able to do high intensity work and do some sprints, and strength work.
yeah,
And then they find that in the second half of the cycle, they feel they're better suited to sort of more slower but endurance type things.
yeah,
So that's an example, and that's a quite a common sort of scenario, though, that of how the cycle might make some women feel. But again, it might not be that for you.
yeah. It is such, oh gosh, it is, like you say, an individual thing. It's crazy. It really is crazy. Like it, it boggles me every time. It really does boggle me every time.
I think it's hard, isn't it? Because you want to be, it's coming.
Oh
So you're
God,
trying
yeah.
to think, what can I do to be prepared? How can I make it so that I can run better or feel better or have more energy in that sort of
Yeah,
time of the cycle? So I think there are things that you can do, and you can try and sort of preempt it, right from planning,
yeah,
working out when's the best time of the month to do a certain type of run or a certain type of training session. Um, and building, like you say, speaking, if you've got a coach, speaking to your coach about that.
yeah,
And also simple other things like being hydrated, being really well fueled. Sometimes if your blood sugar levels are all over the place and you're running a bit on empty, you might not tolerate that as well at different times of the cycle.
hmm.
Some women find when they're premenstrual, their heart rate is up a little bit, their body temperature's up a little bit, and that can make a run really hard going, like you're running sort
Gosh,
of through treacle. So
yeah.
sometimes just knowing and being prepared and thinking, right, what can I do to make this a little bit easier, can sort of smooth it out. I'm not going to pretend I can make it all go away, but smooth it all out a little bit.
Oh, if we, no, I shouldn't say, oh, if we could, because being a woman is absolutely amazing. We are the divine feminine. But I do know of women that actually plan their races around the period because
Mhm.
they know when they're going to perform the best. So they're going to go out and absolutely smash the race. So, I mean, I suppose that's a way of working things as well. But if your race
It
falls
is.
on a certain date, then you know.
If you have a regular cycle and you can plan that far ahead and you're competitive,
But
then and you're striving and pushing, then if you can do that, then great. I
yeah.
guess you just sometimes periods just throw up little surprises, don't they? Especially if you go
Oh,
on holiday or you travel somewhere, you might get one when you weren't expecting it, or so you can never be certain. But if you can plan races and things around that, then I don't know, it just gives you a little feeling of control,
true.
which feels quite empowering.
Absolutely. Is there any, would you suggest, like, would you advise or suggest any kind of certain supplements to help with like again I can only speak about myself, like with fatigue or things like that. Can you suggest for any women out there who would be feeling how I would feel, like tired? I mean, oh God, I am
Mm.
moody as well. Moody as well. You can't look at me sometimes because the hormones, I like to call them.
Hormones. I haven't heard that before.
The
That's great.
hormones. But yeah, like
Oh, I think, yeah.
supplements or anything like that that would be able to help with those
One
estrogen
thing to
levels,
just,
with those
yeah,
progesterone levels.
one thing to bear in mind, I think, with tiredness is whether it's related to the blood flow,
Mhm.
because some women, if they're having really heavy periods, can actually drop their red blood cells and become a little bit anemic
Yeah.
around, during and after their period, if they're having sort of heavy blood loss. And that's the kind of fatigue that makes exercise really difficult.
Hmm.
And make you feel out of breath. It can make you feel sort of lightheaded, dizzy, give you palpitations, make your heart sort of really feel like it's racing. So if it's a fatigue which is linked to sort of heavy blood flow, then it would be important to speak to your doctor, because if you are anemic, then life's really hard,
Yeah.
and you should really be speaking to them about having a blood test done to see, are you anemic, are you low on iron,
Uh-huh.
and making sure that those levels are normal, and if potentially having heavy periods treated
Yeah.
so that you don't become sort of anemic. And I think it's just important. Sometimes we do contribute all symptoms to, oh, it's just the periods, or oh, it's just the menopause, whatever, and sometimes
Yeah.
you miss things.
Absolutely.
So from what you were sort of saying, that it's not really that, and it's more just around the middle of about 14 days, then
Yeah.
that's when you said you feel really, really low. I mean, I think I would be lying if there was a supplement that I would say, yeah, take this, because there's not really great evidence for most of them. It's making sure you're not deficient in anything, making sure you are having a really good, balanced, all-round diet should give you all the vitamins and minerals that you need.
Yeah.
As I say, unless you're having very heavy periods.
Mhm.
Some women, it is easy to be low in iron, even if your periods are kind of moderate, especially if you're not getting a huge amount through your diet. So that might be something to look at. But again, if you think you might be anemic, you shouldn't just be, oh, well, I'll just take some iron. You should be speaking to
Speaking
the
to you.
doctor first.
Absolutely.
I think sometimes it's more a case of looking at your nutrition, um, because fatigue can sometimes be linked to your energy levels and the way you sort of metabolize your food, and making sure during that time that you are snacking, that you are giving yourself kind of a constant blood sugar levels. So having sort of foods with low GI, so a slower release sort of sugars, trying, even though your body might be sort of craving the real sweet stuff,
Yeah.
um, by all means have a bit of that, but perhaps make
Absolutely.
sure as well that you are eating well, and that you are fueling your exercise as well as your everyday life, and making sure you're not having sort of dips and highs and lows in your energy levels too.
Okay. That's really, really good. I hope anybody that's out there listening to this is taking this in and absorbing it, and will listen and pay attention, and get themselves a healthy, balanced diet. Um, that's
Yeah,
really
it's easy to say, but in reality it's hard to
so
do, isn't it? Because we're
it is.
busy, and yeah.
That life gets in the way, and it is, if we were all able to focus on it 100%, would all be
Yeah.
amazing. But life does get in the way when especially when you work full time and you're parenting, and it's hard, and you're trying to train, and you're trying to do this and that. It flipping is hard.
It really is, and you have to live in the real world.
Oh
So,
God, absolutely.
some you can only do what you can do and what you can manage. But I think sometimes, we don't look after ourselves very well.
No, we don't at all.
Our body is only as good as what we sort of put into it. So, sometimes it is just trying to be organized and prepare ahead, and plan, or just have some healthy snack things in the cupboard that you can grab when you're
Yeah.
sort of foraging, trying to find something to eat. Just trying to make sure there's something there. You can never go wrong with a banana.
No,
Um,
you
you know,
never, the good old staple banana. You can never go wrong with a banana.
No,
Absolutely.
it's
Brilliant.
so true.
That's so true. That's amazing. Okay.
Other sort of dietary things do too, like thinking about caffeine as well. Sometimes we can become more or less sort of tolerant to caffeine, and if you're kind of needing it to keep you going, then you can find that can make you really tired as well. So just reducing perhaps the amount of caffeine that you have, or just changing that, cutting it back a bit, trying some decaf, seeing whether that helps to preserve your energy levels through that time as well.
It's funny you mentioned that, actually, because I done a race in the Lake District 2 weeks ago, and it was an ultra, and it had 4,000 meters of elevation. But the 2 weeks leading up to that race, I had cut caffeine out completely. Oh my God, Juliet, I cut it out. I went cold because I am a very heavy coffee drinker. But heck, I had, when I'd stopped it a couple of days after cutting it out, I was getting palpitations. My head was hanging off me.
Yeah.
So it goes to show just how much, because I would rely on caffeine to kind
Mm-hmm.
of get me through, to keep me going. Now, I have really, since that, I've cut it down and I've switched to decaf a lot more. So I would maybe
Yeah.
drink two caffeinated coffees now, but the rest of it would be decaf. But blooming heck, the side effects of it was just
Mm.
unbelievable. It's true what they say, like what you put into your body really can affect us. And we don't actually realize, even with alcohol. I mean, I don't drink. I used to drink when I was back in my 20s, but like I cut all that out as well. Whenever I started running
Yeah.
and getting fitter and everything. But yeah, it's crazy. We don't actually think on how what we put in actually affects us, because we will just put anything in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think also we need to remember that how these things affect us changes over time.
Yeah.
So I was never really very affected by caffeine, and I was a bit of a teapot, and I would drink loads of tea. And then as I got older, for me, it was becoming sort of perimenopausal. I was getting palpitations, and I did what you did. And I went cold turkey when I was on holiday actually, because I thought it
Oh,
would be easy to make a switch when I was in a different sort of environment, and stopped it. And the palpitations went away, but I really noticed that I now no longer get that kind of 4 o'clock, oh my God, I need a cup of tea, kind of slump in energy. And it really has helped to level out my energy level. So I won't go back. I mean, every
yeah,
now and then I'll have something caffeinated, and it's quite handy because if you are doing a race or something, when you have one, you're like, oh gosh, I can really feel it now when I have caffeine.
exactly.
But I think yeah, it's quite powerful. I think but I think we do sometimes just need to change what we do, and because our body is changing as we get older, so we might have got away with it before, or felt that it didn't make much difference, but it might be something to have an experiment with and see, particularly for
Definitely.
those fatigue levels.
Definitely.
Mm.
Oh gosh, you say as we get older. Oh, don't say that.
Yeah. Doesn't That's not a bad thing, but
It's not a
it's
bad
fine.
thing. It's
We
not a bad thing at
No,
all. Um,
it's the world is opening up. Yeah.
it is. It is absolutely. I mean, my God, I'm fitter now in my 40s than I was in my blooming
Yep.
20s. So, I mean, I'll take it
Yeah,
all
me
day
too.
long. 100%. I will take it. Um, No, that's amazing. Like that's what I done. I'd cut caffeine out because I wanted to see how when I drank caffeine at the race, how it would affect me
Yeah.
and would it give me the boost that I needed. Can't can't say that I really noticed anything. But then I drank. They didn't have coffee at the aid station, so I had a cup before I went out into the race. So I don't know. I can't really say that I've
It
no
might You might needed longer. You might have needed longer without it than a couple of weeks. You probably
probably
need a few months
probably.
without it for your body to kind of forget what it does. You were, still kind of withdrawing probably after a couple of weeks.
You know what? In saying that, then I might actually, because I've got this race coming up in January, I might just cut it out now for the next 3 months and give it a whack. And
Yeah,
then
the
when I'm
decaf options
older,
are really good.
they
You can
are.
find some really nice decaffeinated coffees and things.
Yeah.
And Yorkshire tea decaf, pretty good. I mean, it's really not the same, but you get used
I
to it.
know.
And then now when I have a caffeinated one, I'm like, wow, that's really strong. But it's
That's a
not.
kick.
It's just because it's different. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. I had a question come in from one of the people that follow me on Instagram, and he is a meal coach, and he wants to know how, as female athletes, because he coaches females, so how can he talk to his female athletes? I'll use I'll use the air quotes, because that's what we are, Juliet, finely honed
We
female.
are. We are.
How can he broach the subject when he's drawn up his training plans? Because obviously, as men, it is probably quite embarrassing for them, and they don't know how to broach the subject with women in regards to working things around their training plans and things like that. Have you any suggestions or tips for him?
Yeah, I think it is a little bit tricky actually because we're happy to sit here and talk about it, but there are still some women who don't feel
Who aren't?
comfortable to talk about it,
Yeah.
or there may be women who don't understand the impact that it might be having. So it's kind of all about education on both sides, really. But I would we need to normalize this. We need to make this part of
Absolutely.
just, oh well, okay, so you're going on holiday that week, oh, you got your period that week. It just needs to be a part of a normal every conversation. So I would say to use the correct words,
Hmm.
not to be kind of use menstruation, use periods, don't have to sort of there's so many phrases, isn't there, for
Slang phrases for it.
when you've
Oh
got your
God,
period.
absolutely.
Yeah, I've all gone from my brain at the minute, but um, uh, and be open and just ask the question, and not be afraid to say if the woman doesn't want to talk about it or doesn't think it's relevant for her, because it may not be.
Yeah,
But that's fine. Just make it part of a sort of a checklist when you're working with somebody, that you're going through what's important to them, what their goals are, what kind of coaching works for them, what doesn't, and
yeah,
make that part of your sort of standard questioning checklist. Have you noticed any changes in how you feel around your menstrual cycle? Yes, no, yes. Oh, do you want to talk about that? Do we need to factor that in? um
yeah,
and obviously get some um a bit of education yourself as a coach to know how it might impact women, but just to ask the question, really, and to ask it directly, and not sort of beat around the edges and be afraid to say, but literally just say. One of the things sometimes women that I work with say is that their menstrual cycle really affects their training. Is this something that I need to address with you? Do you want to explore that, or do you feel it's not having too much impact and we don't need to worry about it?
exactly.
That
Yeah,
I think that's probably what I would. And but yeah, being aware not all women are affected particularly, and not all women are comfortable to talk about it. But I think most women wouldn't mind at least being asked a question.
question.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah,
I
yeah.
well, it's like you say, most women aren't, well, not most women, but some women may not be comfortable talking about it. But if you're wanting
Mm,
to hit your goals and if you want to
mhm.
train to the best of your ability, then you have to be open. It's unbelievable that in this day and age that something like this is still quite a taboo subject. It's still
Mm.
very much, oh God, we don't dare talk about that. But it's also very positive to see now at races that races cater towards women on their periods and they offer like products that women need. So that is a very positive thing. But yeah, for men, I think they just need to just put their big boy pants on and
Yeah.
draw in. When they start coaching, like you say, when they start coaching women, then they just need to ask the question, how can we work around it and how can we factor that in and how does it affect you?
Yeah, exactly. Because as you've described, it can have a dramatic impact. So if you're trying to coach someone and you don't know that, or you're not trying to work around that, then it just it ends up being very frustrating on both sides, because you can't understand why they're feeling like that. They don't know, that that's not the right kind of session that they want to do that week. And so
Exactly.
yeah, I think it is all about normalizing it and making it just, having a regular period is a marker of good health, in the
Good
same
help.
way that
Yeah.
your blood pressure can be a good marker of good health, and your heart rate and all those other measures. Having a regular period means everything's working great. So yeah, I think generally it's a case of being aware,
Mhm.
knowing how it affects you, and that might be keeping a diary for a few months, with a little mark each day, with how you're feeling, what's hurting, what your energy levels like, and just starting to look for patterns, so you can
Yeah.
see if what happens when, and if there's a pattern, and then controlling what you can control.
Yeah.
um Controlling, trying caffeine, trying alcohol changes, looking at your nutrition, looking at your recovery. Do you need a bit of extra sleep around that time of the month? Look at all the things that you can actually control. And then once you've controlled what you can control, look at how you are at that time. Do you need to flex and adapt your plan, your activities that you do? Is that a better time of the month that you feel you'd be better concentrating on strength work or yoga or having shorter runs, or just, just not exercising? Don't not
Yeah.
exercise, because we know that that helps with so much. Even if you feel rubbish, just you may have to just change what you do and make it more gentle. And I think if you kind of take that approach, then you're doing as much as you can, and it can actually, you start to work with your body instead of against it, and stop being
Yeah.
frustrated by it, and being a little bit more understanding of it. And I think that can be quite a nice way to feel when you're like, oh no, okay, I know what this is, let's work together, rather
Yeah,
than
exactly.
just always like, you're not doing what I want you to
Exactly.
do, and now I can't do this. And yeah.
Definitely. And but for me, yeah, God, I can only say it for me. Since I have started endurance running, so I started
Mhm.
last year, and it's been since last year, and I turned 40 last year, so it was only really since then, heading into like ultra running and things like that, that
Mhm.
that's when I started really listening to my body and recognizing the certain points of the month that I know
Mhm.
if I go out and do a speed session and I'm not hitting that speed session the way that I should, I am terribly hard on myself and I need to hit that speed session. But I know if I don't, then I know why, and then I'll try not be so hard on myself. But
Mhm.
again, certain women may not feel that way, and but yeah, it is like you say, listening to your body and not fighting against it.
Yeah, and it takes practice, and the
It
goalposts keep
does.
moving. Day to day, it can be different. Hour to hour, it can be different. But we do give ourselves quite a hard time sometimes. So I think, yeah, a bit of kindness
I think
never
so.
goes amiss.
Definitely. We need to be
Mm.
kind to ourselves 100%. And definitely we need more women talking about it. We need more women talking about it 100%.
And men.
And yes, absolutely. And men, 100%, yes. Right, Juliet, I am going to let you go. Thank you for joining me.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much. It's been
No
really lovely to
problem.
have a chat with you. Enjoyed it
No
so much.
problem at all. Thank you very much. Okay, guys, I hope you have enjoyed that episode of This Mama Runs podcast with Dr. Juliet McGrattan. If you've enjoyed listening, I am on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I am on YouTube, Instagram. God, you name it, I'm there. Go over to all those platforms, like and subscribe. And yeah, I'm looking forward to recording the next episode of this Mama Runs podcast, because if you don't already know, I am undertaking a little 50-mile jaunt on the Cornish coast path in January with Mud Crew events. Well, was Mud Crew events, but it's Arc of Attrition by UTMB. So I am going to have on the next episode Jane and Fergie, who are the race directors for Arc of Attrition. So I am so excited to talk to them. But yeah, get me on those platforms and just like and subscribe. And I hope you have enjoyed this episode of This Mama Runs podcast.